Hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship, and it wasn't meant for that reason. It was meant for the babies of slaves. We've been looking at birthright citizenship wrong for years, but they've used it. The cartels have used birthright citizenship to get very bad people in.
Active liberal justices, judges have used these injunctions to block virtually all of President Trump's policy. There are 94 federal judicial districts. 5 of those districts throughout this country held 35 of the nationwide injunctions. 94 districts, and 35 out of the 40 opinions with nationwide injunctions came from 5 liberal districts in this country.
So, as you know, the Supreme Court did not rule on the underlying constitutionality of the president's birthright citizenship order. So, what is the plan now? And how concerned are you that the Supreme Court will come back and determine that the executive order is unconstitutional?
And then the DOJ didn't ask the justices to rule on the merits of the birthright citizenship ban, just for explanation purposes, why?
What would you say to Americans who fear that this is more and more concentration of power in the White House and the executive?
If you have an undocumented baby, would that baby then be an enforcement priority?
Are you going to cut funds in the sanctuary states, like for instance California, that keep supporting illegal immigration and then these people work?
Well, this was a big one, wasn't it? This was a big decision. An amazing decision, one that we're very happy about. This morning, the Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law in striking down the excessive use of nationwide injunctions to interfere with the normal functioning of the executive branch. The Supreme Court has stopped the presidency itself. That's what they've done. And really, it's been an amazing period of time, this last hour. There are people elated all over the country. I've seen such happiness and spirit. Sometimes you don't see that, but this case is very important. I was elected on a historic mandate, but in recent months, we've seen a handful of radical left judges effectively try to overrule the rightful powers of the president to stop the American people from getting the policies that they voted for in record numbers. It was a grave threat to democracy, frankly, and instead of merely ruling on the immediate cases before them, these judges have attempted to dictate the law for the entire nation. In practice, this meant that if any one of the nearly 700 federal judges disagreed with the policy of a duly elected president of the United States, he or she could block that policy from going into effect or at least delay it for many years, tie it up in the court system. This was a colossal abuse of power which never occurred in American history prior to recent decades. And we've been hit with more nationwide injunctions than were issued in the entire 20th century together. Think of it, more than the entire 20th century, me. I'm grateful to the Supreme Court for stepping in and solving this very, very big and complex problem, and they've made it very simple. And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation. This was, in fact, it was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War. It was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious. But this lets us go there and finally win that case because hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship, and it wasn't meant for that reason. It was meant for the babies of slaves. So thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis, including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and numerous other priorities of the American people. And with that, I'd like you to listen to the words of Pam Bondi. She's an incredible attorney general. We're very proud of her. And as you know, Todd Blanche is with us, and we have so many others that worked on this case and other cases. And I think they're doing a great job. Pam, please say a few words.
Thank you, President Trump. Thank you for fighting for all Americans. Americans are finally getting what they voted for. No longer will we have rogue judges striking down President Trump's policies across the entire nation. No longer. Today, in the 6-3 opinion, Justice Barrett correctly holds that the district court lacks authority to enter nationwide or universal injunctions. These lawless injunctions gave relief to everyone in the world instead of the parties before the court. As the Supreme Court held today, they turned district courts into the imperial judiciary. Active liberal judges have used these injunctions to block virtually all of President Trump's policies. To put this in perspective, there are 94 federal judicial districts. 5 of those districts throughout this country held 35 of the nationwide injunctions. Think about that, 94 districts. And 35 out of the 40 opinions with nationwide injunctions came from 5 liberal districts in this country. No longer. No longer. These injunctions have blocked our policies from tariffs to military readiness to immigration to foreign affairs, fraud, abuse, and many other issues. The judges have tried to seize the executive branch's power, and they cannot do that. No longer. No longer. And on immigration, on a side note, today marks 2,711 arrests on these terrorists and these gangs. Total arrest today with HSI investigations. And thank you, Stephen Miller. Thank you to Homeland Security. Thank you to everyone working hand in hand with the FBI on all of these transnational gangs. TDA has been a huge terror to our country, as well as MS-13, as well as Sinaloa cartels. No longer. No longer. These injunctions have allowed district court judges to be emperors. They vetoed all of President Trump's power, and they cannot do that. This has been a bipartisan problem that has lasted 5 presidential terms, 5 different presidents, and it has ended today. We will continue to fight for President Trump's policies. Todd's going to say a few words because we've had another major ruling today on transgender books and some other great wins that we've had. But no longer will they have this power in our country. It is the president's authority under his executive branch to do everything to fight for the American people, and he will continue to do that. That's why he was overwhelmingly elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, today's a great day for the rule of law. It's a great day for the Justice Department, and it's one that's been a long time coming, and one that every American should have been waiting for with bated breath. And so I echo what the president said and Attorney General Bondi, that the Supreme Court did a great thing today, not only for this administration, but for every American in this country. If not for the injunctions case, we would be here talking about another great decision that came down today, the trans books case, which restores parents' rights to decide their child's education. Seems like a basic idea, but it took the Supreme Court to set the record straight, and we thank them for that. And now that ruling allows parents to opt out of dangerous trans ideology and make the decisions for their children that they believe is correct. And so we thank the Supreme Court for that. There's been multiple decisions over the past several weeks that just show why this nationwide injunction ban had to happen. For example, what I mean by that is local district court judges issuing decisions that are clearly contrary to law just because they don't like the policy of President Trump. And when it gets to the Supreme Court has to correct it. But that takes time. The Attorney General thanked our lawyers, and I'll do it again. Our lawyers are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to fight these injunctions and to emergency appeals, emergency stays, going back to the district court judge, asking them to change their view. And so their hard work is really paying off today, but over the past few weeks. We had a stay of an order that prevented DHS from moving aliens to a third country. We had a stay of an order that stopped the Department of Defense from implementing military readiness, the EO that President Trump signed. We had another stay of an order forcing reinstatement of fired executive branch employees entirely within the president in Article 2, his right to do. We had a stay of, as you all know, of numerous DOJ cases. And again, every one of those stays requires a tremendous amount of work and effort by the lawyers and parties involved, and they should be doing other work. They should be doing the work that the president and this administration demands and has a right to demand, and not fighting these local judges who don't make decisions based on the law. They make decisions because they just simply don't agree with the administration's decision about a policy, and that's wrong. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, for Pam, please.
Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Attorney General. So as you know, the Supreme Court did not rule on the underlying constitutionality of the president's birthright citizenship order. So what is the plan now? Are you going to try to implement the EO just in states where there isn't a legal challenge?
Yes, so birthright citizenship will be decided in October in the next session by the Supreme Court, unless it comes down in the next few minutes. I guess it could come down. I think they're still deliberating right now on some cases. As you heard, we just got transgender books, which is a huge win. But most likely, that will be decided in October in the next session. However, it indirectly impacts us because, as you correctly pointed out, if there's a birthright citizenship case in Oregon, it will only affect the plaintiff in Oregon, not the entire country. So yes, it's indirectly, but that's pending litigation, and we're waiting on that in the next term.
And how concerned are you that the Supreme Court will come back and determine that the executive order is unconstitutional?
Oh, we're very confident in the Supreme Court. But again, it's pending litigation, and that will directly be determined in October, but it indirectly impacts every case in this country, and we're thrilled with their decision today. Peter.
Madam Attorney General, thank you for being here to take our questions. A couple questions to the both of you. The EO had a 30-day grace period before it goes into effect. Is there any thought about trying to make it effective immediately within that period of time?
We're going to follow the law. We're going to make those decisions, and we're going to do what's right in the bounds of the law.
And then the DOJ didn't ask the justices to rule on the merits of the birthright citizenship ban. Just for explanation purposes, why?
Sure, because that's going to come down in October in the separate. This was huge because it's indirectly impacted today. As I said, it's case by case. Let me reiterate, of the 35 of the 40 nationwide injunctions filed against this president, against his executive authority as president of the United States, 35 of them came from Maryland, D.C., Massachusetts, California, Washington. I mean, that's crazy. These 5 districts. So yes, it indirectly impacts us. It will be a separate decision in October. Next question.
Thank you, Mr. President. A question for you, sir. Do you believe this ends the power of the lower court judges to stop your agenda? Do you see this as a full green light for your agenda going forward?
Well, you'd have to really speak to the lawyers about that. But this is really also a decision based on common sense. It didn't work the other way. It was a disaster where somebody from a certain location in a very liberal state or a liberal judge or a liberal group of judges could tie up a whole country for years because their decision would sometimes take years to overturn. We've overturned many of the decisions, but it would take years to do it. And we have to act quickly when it comes to illegal immigration. We have murderers, killers, we have drug dealers, we have what they've allowed to come into our country. Should never be forgotten. It should never be forgotten what they've done to our country. And we have to be able to act very quickly, and we're going to do that.
What would you say to Americans who fear that this is more and more concentration of power in the White House and the executive?
Well, this really brings back the Constitution. This is what it's all about. And this is really the opposite of that. I mean, the question is fine, but it's the opposite. The Constitution has been brought back.
And a question for both the President and the Attorney General. Under birthright citizenship, if this is implemented, who would be tasked with actually vetting citizenship? And how, would this be a situation where you have nurses and doctors checking for citizenship of parents? Or
this is all pending litigation. It's going to be decided in October by the Supreme Court, and we'll discuss that after the litigation.
If you have an undocumented baby, would that baby then be an enforcement priority?
The violent criminals in our country are the priority now. Let me put it in perspective. Today marked the 2,711th arrest in our country of TDA members, just TDA. Everyone in this room agrees they are one of the most violent criminal organizations in the world. And the Biden administration let them walk into our country for the last 4 years. 2,711 of them today have been arrested in our country. That is the priority of Donald Trump. That is the priority of this country, of Homeland Security, of all of our lawyers, of FBI. That's the priority. That will be discussed in October when the Supreme Court hopefully rules in our favor, and we're very confident of that. But you should all feel safer now that President Trump can deport all of these gangs, and not one district court judge can think they're an emperor over this administration and his executive powers and why the people of the United States elected him.
I just might add one thing, and they used birthright citizenship, some of the worst people, some of the cartels, to get people into our country, just so you know. And again, I say, if you look at the end of the Civil War, the 1800s, it was a very turbulent time. If you take the end day, was it 1869 or whatever? But you take that exact day, that's when the case was filed. And the case ended shortly thereafter. This has to do with the babies of slaves, very, very obviously. And I think we're going to win. People I don't think they went about discussing it right. I came along and we looked and we said, wait a minute, this is wrong. We've been looking at birthright citizenship wrong for years, but they've used it. The cartels have used birthright citizenship to get very bad people in, and what Pam's doing and what Todd and everybody else, what they're doing at DOJ and all over, FBI, ICE, Border Patrol, these are incredible people. They're trying to keep our country safe, and they don't want to have people come in. This is just another way that they get illegal immigrants into our country, and in some cases, very, very bad ones. Go ahead. Okay.
Sir, Mr. President,
go ahead. With the glasses, gentlemen. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, are you going to cut funds in the sanctuary states, like for instance California, that keep supporting illegal immigration, and then these people work under
Yeah, we're
the
giving
table?
them a hard time.
And also, in a foreign policy question.
I mean, they don't have a governor in California. They have a man that wants to give away everything to people that nobody's seen before. If we didn't go into Los Angeles with the military, which did a fantastic job, but if we didn't go into Los Angeles bringing in the National Guard, I would have brought the military if it was necessary, because you have to. We have the right to. That was another thing upheld by the Supreme Court. But if we didn't go in with the National Guard and be strong and tough, you wouldn't maybe have Los Angeles. It would be like the rest of California, the rest of Los Angeles. They lost 25,000 houses in a fire. They should have lost none. I sent the water down. I had to break into their water supply because they just refused to do it. They're crazy. There's something wrong with them. They have plenty of water. They don't have droughts or anything. They have We let it come down from the Pacific Northwest. They routed all the water out into the Pacific Ocean for environmental reasons, okay? And now you have 25,000 houses, none of which would have burned down if you had the water. They didn't have water. They didn't have water for the fire pumps. They didn't have water in the sprinkler systems that people put in. So the answer is we're going to work with governors. We're going to work with radical left Democrats and Democrats, and we're going to make it good for everybody. We'll have to stop the crime in those, in the case of the cities, I think I can say just about all cities with heavy crime are run by Democrats. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Iris Tao with NTD Research Media with the Epoch Times. Thank you so much for doing this. It's very refreshing for all of us here.
It's a good group.
In this room.
It's refreshing.
Very refreshing. Yes, we have
Probably.
this, and for the
I understand what you mean.
So thank you so much for coming out here.
Other than Caroline's done a great job.
Yes.
You're referring to the past administration, not to Caroline, right?
Yes. Back to the ruling today, if you don't mind. So you have always talked about winning for the American people.
Right.
How do you think today's ruling will enable you to further deliver for American families and workers across the country, not only when it comes to immigration, but also when it comes to trade, energy? What actions are you most eager to move forward
Well, I think taking power away from these absolutely crazy radical left judges is a tremendous. This is such a big day. This is such a big day. It's like. It's sort of sad because we're doing the signing at 3 o'clock, and this may very well dominate the signing of a big war that was going on and really affecting the continent of, think of it, the entire continent of Africa was being affected. And we're settling that war today, and this will probably be a headline. But this is a very big moment, and it gives power back to people that should have it, including Congress, including the presidency. And it only takes bad power away from judges. It really doesn't take power. It takes bad power, sick power, and unfair power. And it's really going to be, this is a very monumental decision. So I think that'll be it. And I just want to thank everybody. This is a really big day. We've had a big week. You know, we've had a big week. We've had a lot of victories this week. NATO was a tremendous victory. The war was a tremendous. Look, we were talking about this for 30 years, about Iran being nuclear. And all I said is it will not be nuclear, and it's not going to be nuclear. And, you know, I want to give credit to a lot of people, most importantly to our great military. Boy, they put out that fire. Once that happened, once those bombs got dropped, that war was over. That war was over. But I just want to compliment them. Incredible. The general and all of his generals. Pete Hegseth was great. They all. And now I want to compliment Pam. A lot of genius went into this. You know, people, if you don't say it exactly right, if the Supreme Court doesn't get it because it's incorrectly spoken about, and that happens. A lot of cases are lost because they don't say the right words. But I want to correct. She's going to go down as a great attorney general. I may change my mind about that. I don't know. Maybe someday I'll have to call and say I was only kidding. She's going to go down as a great attorney general. This was a tremendous win, and we've had tremendous wins, but this was a tremendous win today. So I just want to congratulate you and Todd and your whole staff. Very brilliant people, and we can't forget John Sauer.
That's right.
Who is with. There's a medical emergency within his family, so he's taking care of that, and we said absolutely. So I just want to thank everybody very much. Thank you.
Jeff Bezos on his wedding weekend.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir.